well, I'm pulling this all off and cleaning, but I'm just checking here to see if there's any signs of gasket failure. It's clearly oily, greasy down here, all around here, but that doesn't necessarily mean it was all leaking from the inside out. Obviously, down in a block here. Well, would have been. See any obvious signs of gasket failure all around the front here. Watching all the videos of the 5.2 to 318 and the 5.9 to 360 engine. See, anyway, it's time for a cleaning. Alright, short of actually having a proper shop sink, one of these little skill saw, I say tripod, so we're just going to give some power clean here, and we'll do our proper parts cleaner stuff, but I'm going to pull off, before I start doing that, I'm going to pull off our thermostat housing and our sensors. This heater hose and the feeding terminals. I don't want to get them all wet and nasty. And thermostat housing. And then we'll soak our intake manifold in some chemical bath. Oh, and this one as well. Take that one off as well. So yeah, 13 mil or ½ inch. I've been so in a rush to install it. Might need a new gasket now. We didn't put the RTV or the gasket sealer on. Well, it was just gasket material. So it should be okay. Bottom's out there. ½ inch would be ideal here.
You wanna go to the park, is it? Wanna go to the park, is it? Let me finish taking this off, put this in a bath, and I can change clothes and we'll go, okay?
Bring the football.
Okay. Why?
Because I want to be a footballer when I grow up.
Okay. You want to be a monster truck driver, a pilot, or everything?
Dad, you know what I'm going to be when I grow up?
What's that?
Football.
Okay.
I know a team of mine going to be sports when I grow up.
What? Portugal.
Is it?
This is a fairly new gasket. I don't think it refailed. I don't think it's failed. These were torqued pretty good. It was just the bolts on the planet cover itself that seemed to have backed out.
So yeah, essentially this job is a lot of cleaning off old gasket material, old grease. You want to use the right tools. Be very, very careful using blades. Obviously, you don't want to scratch up your mating surfaces too much here, or at all for that matter. You can use plastic scrapers, but those tend to be really challenging to work with as far as getting the material off. So just using a steel blade, but very flatly and carefully, will usually do the trick. And of course, any kind of brush, you're best off using either some kind of polyester brush bristle or even brass, but not steel. Typically, we don't use steel brushes on metal surfaces that need to be smooth mating surfaces. And here we're cleaning the intake manifold. We got everything plugged up. We don't want to get chemicals and the dirt and other stuff inside the engine itself. So use what you can, towels, paper towels, to plug up any parts, and then a degreaser and soak what you can in a chemical bath, cleaning material before you get ready to install your gasket itself. And here's the gasket I used, Plenum gasket. In hindsight, I guess if I was more patient, I would have ordered an aluminum Plenum plate. The stock Plenum plate is steel, but because the intake manifold is aluminum material and there are different types of metals, apparently that contributes to premature failure of the gasket itself and the Plenum plate itself. So I just installed a new Felpro Plenum gasket here and followed the instructions here. The key to doing this is torque, getting the right torque, and also using thread locker for the bolts so it doesn't come off easily. And there's a torque sequence for the intake manifold and the Plenum plate itself. For the Plenum plate, I'll show you in the factory service manual what you're supposed to do there. You should pause it if you want to get exactly the torque sequence, but basically there's 14 bolts on a V6 or there's 15 bolts on the V8. So you can pause that section of the factory service manual if you want to see the exact torque sequence. But initially you want to bottom them out with your hands or a little wrench, but you don't want to tighten them down. So here's the specs there for the torque sequence. And I'm doing the V6 here, so 14 bolts. You basically start in the middle and you crisscross your way out. And there's 4 different stages, or 3 different stages of torque that you do. And then, of course, your final stage, you check your torque for all of it. But yeah, that is the secret. Apparently some people just bolt and tighten them down, and then they wonder why their plenum plate comes loose, the gasket fails, something comes loose, and it's not torqued in proper sequence. But anyway, apparently that's a trick. I'll let you know in a few years if I have another plenum failure, and then if I do next time around with this or any other vehicle, I'm going to make sure I use similar metals. So if it's an aluminum intake manifold, I'm going to use an aluminum plenum plate, but you have to order those special. But yeah, installed the new intake manifold gaskets on the clean surface, and of course with the intake manifold there's also these end seals, which you kind of have to use some sealant, some RTV specific for gaskets on there in the corners. And then the next step is to get the intake manifold on. You're supposed to, or they suggest you fabricate some alignment dowels using old intake manifold bolts, and of course I bought new intake manifold bolts so I could use the old ones. So you just basically create these alignment guides and pick the 4 corners there to put them in. That way you can align the intake manifold right onto the dowels. Once you get it perfectly, then you could remove the alignment dowels after you install a few actual intake manifold bolts on adjacent bolt holes, and it should be aligned perfectly. And then again, there's a torque specifics, which I'll tell you about here later on, exactly what the torque is, or you can go back to the factory service manual to get those exact specs. But yeah, essentially that's the job of getting the intake manifold back in, torquing it in sequence, using alignment dowels to get it aligned perfectly, and make sure you have all those corners sealed off perfectly. In the next update, we will share with you specifics on the final wrap-up of the job, which included valve covers, the 2 valve covers, passenger and driver side, as well as putting the rest of the engine back together. But that is the core of this intake manifold job. Hope you enjoyed. See you again soon. Bye-bye now.